Thank you so much for joining us today on doing this sort of video footage with it. We're really excited to have you as a part of this series of sort of short videos that we're doing. And just for the benefit of those just starting to listen into this, we started on a programme about 12 months or so ago, interviewing some really inspirational sort of role models, and our initial journey was trying to promote women in tech. Because I'm the CEO of a tech business, and it's something I'm really passionate about. But as we've progressed through sort of this, we've realised it's so much more than just get women in tech. It's getting women into any kind of management and leadership roles, but getting all sectors of diversity and inclusion into roles that they never dreamt would be possible. And so we're now starting to interview all sorts of people, and that's really good. And the basis for this was really my own story, which I'm not going to bore you with now, but it's really for me, my personal journey was one of social mobility, and in my case it was a vertical mobility move for me as I progressed into setting up and running my own business. So anything that I can do to give back to young people through going into schools, colleges, and recruiting younger people into my organisation, whether they're educated or not, really has no relevance to me, because it's all about attitude and work ethic and how much they want to get on, and everybody deserves that opportunity, don't they? So having you here as also as a role model and inspirational leader, we're really keen to know how you got to where you are today within Defra. So I'm going to let you do your own introduction, so you could just tell our audience who you are and what your role is, just to start us off.
Righto. So thank you so much for asking me, inviting me along to have this chat with you, because I agree with everything you say. I guess it's not just about women in tech, it's about everybody in tech, isn't it? And everybody really feeling empowered and enabled and supported to go after the career and the job that they want. So let's expand our minds as to what's in the art of the possible around that, and make sure that we're sharing our stories and talking about the struggles we had on that journey and how we overcame them, to hopefully let people know that it's possible for them to do that too. So my name is Stella Power. I am the Chief Operating Officer for Defra Digital and Data and Technology Services. I've been doing that job for about a year now, and prior to that, my background is a bit of a mishmash, really. So I started my career in retail, managing ladies' fashion stores in central London, and before I went to university, but before I did go to university, I took a year out and I worked at the DWP during that year, just to save up some money before I went to do my degree. And so that's where I sort of first got my introduction to the civil service. So when I got to about 30, I decided I'd sort of got everything I could get out of a career in retail, and I wanted to do something that sort of was a bit more in the area of public service, and that had a bit more sort of giving something back to it. And so recalling my experience before I went off to do my degree at DWP, I decided to try and rejoin into civil service. So that's what I did. And during my career in the civil service, so I entered at a sort of a lower middle management grade, really, when I left retail. My first job on rejoining was with the DVLA, the Drivers Vehicle and Licensing Agency in Swansea. And since then, I have been through various departments. I've worked in Cabinet Office, worked at the Department for Transport, Rural Payments Agency, and now in Defra. My background is not technology, to be honest with you. My background is really organisational transformation, programme management, and I did a fairly long stint in HR as well. But if you were to ask me, what is it? What on earth is it that you're good at, Stella? I'd probably say I'm a pretty decent programme manager.
Oh, excellent. Oh, that's really good. So obviously you've been in lots of departments and you've looked in different areas as well. So what would you actually say is your career defining moment, or what sticks out at you as being one of your biggest achievements so far?
So a couple of things, I guess. I mean, you know, working in big transformation programs is always really exciting. You know, you're sort of at the cutting edge of a change, and you know, I really enjoy that, and I enjoy the cut and thrust of a program environment. You know, and particularly one that's taken the organisation on a journey to somewhere new. So I've done a number of transformation programs, but probably the one of which I'm most proud is the one that I did it for 4 years at Cabinet Office. It was the Civil Service People Survey and Employee Engagement Programme.
Okay.
So that was just getting off the ground at that point, where I was the programme manager for that. It was at the time the largest piece of employee research in Europe, a huge data collection exercise. Obviously then with the challenge of what you do with that data when you get it. And that's where I really started to learn about employee engagement, the importance of being able to challenge, inspire, motivate, and make work a really enjoyable experience for the people in your organisation. I learned a huge amount doing that, not just about all different government departments, because it covered every government department. So from the perspective of, you know, a professional grounding and understanding the civil service, you know, you couldn't beat it. But also about, you know, what is important in terms of engagement, in terms of, you know, keeping your employees with you as you go through your leadership journey. You know, it was an incredible learning experience from that perspective too. And I just hugely enjoyed the work that we did. And I'm incredibly proud that work is still going on today, 10 years later. I mean, their 10-year anniversary of that last year. So that is one thing that I'm incredibly proud of. And I guess the other career defining moment for me is becoming a senior civil servant, which I did about a year ago. I'm probably not what people expect of a senior civil servant. I think they probably don't expect somebody who went to, you know, a pretty average school and a very average university, frankly. You know, academically, you know, I've got by, but I've got a pretty short attention span, to be honest with you. So it was always a real struggle for me to, you know, get through the academic process. Was, you know, not something I found easy, you know, but I sort of continue to challenge myself on that to this day. So I'm doing an MBA at the moment. And again, you know, like I said, my attention span is pretty short. So I find it really, really challenging to do that. But I do believe in lifelong learning. And I do believe that that's really important. And if you were to ask me, you know, well, what's one of the factors that's played into the fact that you are, you know, you now have reached that role in the senior civil service, I think lifelong learning is a part of that. I think one of the other things is I've been really fortunate to work with some absolutely great bosses who've really championed my achievements, valued the difference and the different perspective that I can bring, and afforded me some really interesting opportunities to deliver on some really naughty stuff.
So have they been role models for you in terms of sort of helping you on the journey that you've had from your career?
Yes, certainly. You know, I've had multiple role models through the course of my journey. And you know, sometimes with those role models, it's not everything about them, but you can pick out one particular thing that they're so good at, you know, and use that to inspire your development in that area, your improvement in that area. So if I think about the role models in my career, there are almost too many to mention. If I had to say one that was the most important, it's a lady that I worked with, who's now a very dear friend of mine, actually, back when I was working in retail. But when I started working in retail, I sort of landed in London, a very shy, introverted, reserved Welsh person in the big city, in the bright lights of the West End. I was quite overwhelmed and really challenged by the job that I was doing. And the one thing that I observed about her was how good she was at building rapport with people, how good she was at building relationships, how she was able to listen to people, express warmth and empathy, not just to staff, to customers. And I watched her and I started to emulate her, because that wasn't me. I was really quite a shy and reserved person, but just by watching and observing her, I think, enabled me to really grow in that area, and remains, I think, one of the most valuable things in my toolkit to this day.
Yeah, I think there's two really important things you mentioned there. When you go back to, the role you started with in the employment area, with all of that data that you were picking up, I guess that data also gave you lots of information about the kind of people that were being employed, and what sectors were being overlooked, or were not given sort of that opportunity, or at least encouraged into that as well. But that listening and learning and observing, I think there's a lot to take away from that, and that's I can emulate with that, because I've had a couple of really good role models. And when you describe this introverted Stella, I can't believe that, but I can, because when I explain to people how introverted I was in my 20s, people just don't believe me, because obviously in the role I'm at now, they see me as quite assertive and confident. But inwardly, it's okay to be introverted and to be quiet sometimes. But I had role models as well, and they instilled confidence for me to step out of the unknown. And so I think role models, I mean, sometimes you stumble across them, don't you? But if you haven't stumbled across a role model, I'm sure you would agree with me, go and try and find a role model, because they are out there, and the support is out there for people that want that help, isn't there?
Absolutely. I mean, I've got a mentor now to this day. It's really important for me that I've got a mentor that I can work with, bounce some ideas around with, will give me some feedback, in a really constructive way. I also mentor two other people, one of whom is in my organization, one of whom is outside my organization, and I get a lot out of that personally, and learn as much from the person I'm mentoring as hopefully they're taken away from me. So, keeping up these sort of dialogues throughout your career, I think, is really, really important. And it comes back to that point I was making about lifelong learning, is, the journey sort of never stops. If I ask myself the question in my 20s, well, why was I so shy and reserved then? Because I didn't have the confidence, and I didn't have the confidence that my voice, could be valued, would be heard. But just by keeping up the relationships, by continuing this journey of lifelong learning, by taking some chances, by taking on some really naughty problems, more importantly, by asking for help when I needed it, because people would come and wrap their arms around you and give you that help. That's how you get on that journey. You're not going to get there on day one.
So if you, we do a lot of work with schools, so if you were giving advice to a student, aspiring to, do something different, or want to become a leader, whatever the sector might be, not just tech, what would your advice be?
If I reflect back and think, what do I wish somebody told me? I think it would be to spend a bit more time learning about myself, and what my preferences are, what I really enjoy doing, not feeling that I had to fulfill an expectation that maybe I had of myself, or was coming from somewhere else. But really focusing on what I enjoy and what interests me and what I feel I'm good and I can bring value in. So really thinking that through about yourself, and being prepared to change that thought about yourself through the course of your career. So, whilst retail was working for me in my 20s, as I moved into my 30s, it wasn't, so just to keep always thinking, and learning about yourself, and accepting that what you learned one day is probably going to change, and that's why you should keep having that dialogue. So if your passion is technology, if you're interested in technology, then lean into it. You don't have to be an expert from day one. And
it's not all about coding either, is it?
Absolutely not.
And that's the misunderstanding, isn't it?
I think absolutely. There's a wealth of different roles and skills that we need in a technology environment. And don't feel that you need to be either a coding expert or an incredible mathematician or a fantastic analyst or process mapper. We've got a whole range of people working in DDTS, doing a whole host of different tasks. Sure, there's some of that coding, software development happening. There's also a whole load of other stuff around project delivery, financial management, managing the communications and training and guidance and all of the stuff that goes out to help the organization actually use the technology that we're delivering to them. So it's an amazing range of different roles, that we provide opportunities in DDAT, in Defra. I think follow your passion and remember on that climb that you go on to be a leader, remember all of the people that helped you get there and be the person that then does that for other people.
Exactly. That's fantastic advice. No, that's really good. And I'm just going to end on one final question. So you've obviously reached a very sort of senior post within the civil service, within Defra. So what goal have you set yourself that you're most determined to achieve, either at Defra or within your career?
That's a great question. I guess for me, it's something about it. If I think about the role that I'm doing now, but really this theme sort of runs through all of the jobs that I've done, because it's what interests me, is what gets me out of bed in the morning, if you like. So it's something about, in this role, sustainable technology delivery, but I mean that in the absolutely broadest sense of the word. So it's not just about our sustainability. We've got commitments to net zero and all of that stuff, which are really important. But it's about sustainable technology, having a sustainable technology workforce, having a good pipeline into that workforce, having a process that ensures that pipeline is as inclusive and is diverse, and as happy in the workplace as I would like to see them be. I mean, basically, I think it's about ensuring that DDTS is a great place to work, that we achieve big things here, that people are doing things that they are proud of, that they can talk to their colleagues about, that they can talk to their friends and family about. That's what it's all about for me, is that people are having a really good experience here.
Exactly. And it's so good to hear you so passionate and happy, with what you're doing, and a really good sort of example. I'm not going to use the word role model again, but a really good example of, how working in a sector like the civil service, where some people think that it's not very dynamic, but there's so much good stuff that happens in the civil service, and then there's exciting projects and roles that can be done. So this has been a fantastic opportunity to open the doors on that, Stella, and I really appreciate your time that you've spent with us today. Thank you so much.